So Jubilee asked that I record this for other people. I want to start by saying welcome to everybody. I don't know, this was unfortunately done a little last minute, and we're trying to turn people out to a lot of meetings this week. So yeah, it's one of those weeks. So it may just be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us, and that's okay. We're recording it. We're going to share it out. So I'm going to start with the welcome. So hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm Liz Filsco. Some of you know and some of you don't that I am organizing in Addison so that Jubilee McGill can run for a House seat. So thank you, Jubilee, for stepping up. What we've been doing with Rights and Democracy, or at Rights and Democracy, we've been pushing for a people's bailout. We've been looking to extend pandemic unemployment assistance. We have been lobbying our national delegates to cover everybody with healthcare during a pandemic. We have asked that our legislators put a moratorium on rent and evictions. We have asked that student debt be canceled. And we have asked that green jobs be invested in so that there's a jobs guarantee and that we are paving the way for a green future. So we do this work in conjunction with our national partners, People's Action and the Center for Popular Democracy. And I'm not paying a ton of attention, but I've paid enough attention to know that current GOP proposals are very lacking in substance for the people and are very self-serving. And I see Zoe's nodding her head, yeah. And I know Dave's tweeted about that a bit. So tonight we will hear from 3 of our endorsed candidates. Our endorsed candidates are also Renew New England climate champions. And we're also going to hear from grassroots leaders from Verdennes who are lobbying their elected officials to hold the police force accountable. And they're going to share out how they are building a movement to move from protest to power in Verdennes. And I'd like to point out that we have similar movements unfolding in Bennington, in Burlington, and there are ones taking shape in Rutland and St. Albans. So this is an exciting time. It's also a time for us to, be involved in the budgeting of our municipalities, of our localities, of our state. We really want to put our money where our values are, and our values are not necessarily in corrections. I think we all agree on that. I do want to mention before we get started that tomorrow night we have a Get Out the Vote, statewide Get Out the Vote launch party. And I'd like to remind everyone to make sure that we're all connected, please, on social media so that we're amplifying one another's posts. So it is 7:04. I'm a little ahead of the game. So I am going to start with Dave Silverman, and I'm going to go ahead and mute myself and just cede the floor.
Hi, everyone. I think I know most of you. Kate, I don't think I know you personally. Nice to meet you. And Zoe, I'm not sure if we've met personally or not. But it's a pleasure. I am a candidate for High Bailiff of Addison County, but much, which is not much. I've been a very active pro bono drug policy and criminal justice reform advocate for several years, involved at the state level and closer to home, leading the fight to legalize cannabis, which has been half successful. We're still working on the commercial sale aspect of it, and have been working with legislators trying to kind of shape the narrative around broader criminal justice reform, broader drug policy reform. One day we'll be able to end the war on drugs here in Vermont. I'm running for High Bailiff, which is a countywide office, in order to return that office into civilian hands. The office of High Bailiff is it's the one person elected in each county with authority to arrest the sheriff. And it's in the state constitution, and it's there for a reason. If we don't have someone who can hold the sheriff to account, hold the sheriff liable for violation of law, then the sheriff is above the law. And we can't have anyone be above the law. That is not democracy. That is a recipe for authoritarianism. Unfortunately, in the last 50 years or so, a tradition has emerged, and I think it's through our general deference and respect for uniformed law enforcement officers, to have another law enforcement officer be in the role of high bailiff. It's been seen as a stepping stone to the sheriff. It's been seen as a sheriff in waiting, an office that is reserved for either the sheriff's favorite deputy or the sheriff's political rival. And lo and behold, I'm running against the sheriff's favorite deputy and the sheriff's political rival. You know, they are both fine people, and they are both just systemically wrong for this role. This role needs to be in civilian hands. We need an independent high bailiff who's not tied up within the law enforcement hierarchy, even if it's just symbolic, even if it's just a title that never gets exercised, because let's face it, Peter Newton is very unlikely to violate the law. He's a decent guy. But that doesn't matter. It is not about the current office holder. It's about the institution, and it's about the systemic problems that we see in law enforcement here in Vermont and across the country. And so that's why I'm running. I want to be an independent civilian high bailiff, and I want to demonstrate both to the law enforcement community as well as to other politicians here in Vermont, people running for office, that there is a movement, there is a large majority in favor of policing reform on a systemic level, and I think that my election will help move the needle on broader issues. And so that's my campaign in a nutshell, and I hope that many people will support it. Liz asked me to specify some ways that folks can help the campaign. And I'm not going to ask for money. But if you have the ability to get on the phone, Liz will put phone bank in the comments in the chat box. And I would prefer really that you start with Jubilee's phone bank. Jubilee's House district is entirely within the county that serves as my district. And so when you make calls for Jubilee, you are making calls for me. I really want Jubilee elected to the House. That is the kind of seat change that will help us make it. So please get on that phone bank. When we reach everyone in Jubilee's phone bank, then go ahead and switch over to mine. But the Jubilee's first. I will be in Virgins this Saturday, August 1st from 10 to noon on the City Green. We're going to do a socially distanced meet and greet. I've got a permit from the city manager, everyone's favorite. So I'll be there with a tent, and come by, say hello, let's chat, take home a lawn sign. We'll just have a nice time. Everyone will wear masks, and everyone will stand 6 feet apart. And then you can get Lulu ice cream afterwards. I will. And then this Sunday, from noon to 2, I'll be in Bristol doing the same thing on the Bristol Green. And I hope to see you there, if not in Virgins. And then we have the primary day coming up on Tuesday, August 11th. Please vote by mail before then. Please make sure that your ballot gets into the hands of your city clerk by Tuesday the 11th. It is not enough to postmark by the 11th. It has to be received by the 11th. So please vote early, vote once, early, and get your ballots into your town clerk or city manager, as the case may be. And I'll wrap it up and say thank you very much for your support. Unfortunately, I cannot stay for the rest of the meeting. I am my family's chef, and I've got to go and feed this very hungry teenager. So thank you all very much. Thank you, RAD, for the endorsement. This is a great organization. I'm so glad, so proud to have its support, onward to victory. Thank you, everyone.
Dave, I have 2 questions before you run. Is it davesilberman.com?
It is davesilberman.com.
And what's for dinner?
What's for dinner? We're having veggie burgers with all the fixins. We're having some sweet potato fries. And I think a salad.
Perfect.
Not my greatest work, but it will do.
It's very healthy and very well-rounded. Thank you so much, Dave.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone.
Good night. All right. Well, welcome, Barbara. And is it Luella? You're on mute.
Yeah, I just unmuted.
Am I saying your name right, Luella?
Yeah, I go by Ellie usually, but
Ellie?
yeah.
Welcome. Okay, so we are now moving on to Jubilee McGill, who is the former organizer in Addison for Rights and Democracy. And Jubilee and I both got involved with RAD following gubernatorial forums.
You're messing up my lead-in.
Oh, sorry. I'm gonna mute myself and just.
Also, I was part of the hiring committee, so I got to interview Liz while she was going through the hiring process. I actually got a lot of the Vermont RAD actually was part of their interview process. Hi everybody, I'm Jubilee McGill. I live in Bridport with my husband and 3 children. Born and raised in Addison County and decided to kind of stay here once I was deciding where to kind of put down roots. I work full-time now. I was working part-time, but when I took a leave of absence from RAD's run, I went full-time at the John Graham Shelter, which is
I think you need to slow down with your speaking because is everybody else getting like choppy audio?
Yeah.
Okay. I recommend, I know it may feel unnatural and you're not speaking quickly. Thank you. Sorry.
Let me see. Is it better like this if I use the computer microphone? What if I turn my camera off?
Let's try that.
Okay. So as Liz was starting to tell, early in the spring of 2016, I walked into a gubernatorial debate organized by Rights and Democracy. And when I walked into that venue, if you had asked me, I never would have considered myself a possible future politician or even an activist. I most of my life dodging the spotlight. Public speaking was my biggest fear. Still makes me nervous. Shame had prevented me from recognizing my own personal power. Society taught me, like many others, that shame is as a young single mother. The time I spent living below the poverty line, that it was a moral failing. As I continued to engage with RAD and as they gave me encouragement and a platform to share my story, I started to see the power in voices like mine. Shed shame and the harm caused by dominant narratives, and I began to see the societal shifts possible. What is this note? Liz is saying, I'm sorry, my internet and we just new modem apparently seems to not be helping.
Are you, I put a note to maybe ditch the microphone.
I was using the microphone. Is this better with headphone microphones?
You unplug your headphones and try that. Try that?
I was doing.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Yeah. Ugh.
I mean, it's like 80% good, but we're definitely missing stuff.
I'm incredibly sorry about this.
No, it's, hey, rural
Rural
life.
Vermont living.
Right. Do you want to call in?
That's what I would suggest.
Maybe put your video back on and just call in.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to change my audio.
So while you're calling in and getting settled, we
Do
can
you want to
talk.
have Kate go?
What's that?
Do you want to have Kate go?
Sure. Kate, that's okay. All right, great. All right, super. Thanks, Jubilee, for your flexibility. So, Kate, I'm just going to mute myself and let you introduce yourself.
Okay, sounds good. My name is Kate Bailey, and I'm here on behalf of Mari Cordes. Mari is running for re-election. She's the state rep in one of two state reps in Bristol, Lincoln, Moncton, and Starksboro. That's her region in Addison County. And I met Mari in 2017, July 2017, in Washington, D.C. We were both a part of a big national action. Center for Popular Democracy was hosting a big demonstration to save the Affordable Care Act. And Mari, I'm here representing her today. I'm pretty sure Mari is at work. She's a nurse at the hospital. And so that's why I'm here, not her tonight. Still working full time and state rep. She just walks the walk, and that's why I am so committed to her personally as her friend and as her campaign coordinator and recruiter at the moment. I think the three things, I know she's deeply involved in the Climate Caucus, and she is a member of the House Healthcare Committee. And so the three main pinnacles of her work in the legislature are climate justice, racial justice, and universal health care and health and wellness. And those are issues that she's been working on as an activist for decades, and I'm just really excited to have her in the legislature. So we are having an organizing call on Friday. I'm sure this, to get folks from our campaign rallied, and we'll send folks over after our meeting on Friday to the Get Out the Vote RAD phone banking. That would be awesome. And we are in coordination with Jubilee and David and all working together in Addison County. And I think the thing that we need, the thing I wanted to mention is that Mari won. She beat the incumbent in 2018 by 56 votes. So the numbers are the thing that we need folks to help us on, like the data points and techie vote builder kind of folks, because we want to really make sure that we build on that 56 votes and we have, you know, more to gain here. So that's all I'll say, and I can answer any questions or bring them back to Mari. And I'm just really excited to be, I do live in South Burlington, so I'm sorry I'm not an Addison County homegirl, but I'm very excited to be working with you all.
Kate, does Mari have a website that I could drop in the chat?
MariCordes.org. MARICURDES. You got it.
Great. No questions? All right. Kate,
Thanks.
thank you so much. It's been really fun to start working with you.
Oh, it's very nice to see your face, and maybe someday we'll see each other in person.
Absolutely. And I will add that 2020 is the year of the nurse.
My partner is a nurse with Mari, so I second that.
It's so interestingly, as you know, with respect to messaging, 2020 is the year of the nurse, and boy, is it ever, right? I mean, anyway.
Could I just ask if Mari is running unopposed, or who's running against her?
Good question. So it's Mari and Caleb Elder. It's a
Yeah.
2-seat district, and there's 2 other folks who will be running in the general election. She doesn't have primary opponents,
Okay.
but it's Lynn Dyke and Valerie. The other candidate ran against her last time, and I'm blanking on her name. Her initials are VM. Yeah, but they are vastly different politically from Mari. I saw that Lynn Dyke was recently at the pro-police, anti-Black Lives Matter rally at the steps of the State House this past weekend. So if Mari or Caleb lost to either of the 2 other women running, it would be a drastic political shift, even from Fred Baser. She took a seat from Fred Baser, who was a Republican, a more moderate Republican last time, 2018.
Yeah, I will say that that Ms. Dyke and her partner, as well as Fred Baser, all came and knocked on our door in 2016, I think it was.
Oh, I thought you were going to say recently.
Yeah, so Mari did not, and maybe it's because everybody in Lincoln knows her, but Addison County is a pretty hard county to cover for door knocking. But is she planning to do any door-to-door work? It's kind of a dangerous time to do that.
Yeah, she knocked on a ton of doors, but didn't have a lot of us knocking on doors last time. So I know it was a challenge, and she was out in the middle of the night in Starksboro and back roads in 2018. So I talked to her about this, and she doesn't plan on knocking on any doors this year because, as a nurse, she doesn't think that would be best practice. But that is going to change the campaign quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something that we'll have to talk about, and how that looks different this year from previous years.
And for anyone who is interested in helping to phone bank, so Dave has a county-wide race. So his phone bank is just for his race, but the district races, so Mari's phone bank and Jubilee's phone bank, include the state race. And Mari has a lot of people on her contact list. So we are definitely interested in people who are willing to help us get out the vote by phone banking. My understanding is none of the Democratic candidates are planning to door knock. I think that was kind of an agreed upon best practice. I do know that I got a complaint earlier today from a constituent in Rutland County that someone knocked on her door, a Republican knocked on her door without a mask, and she was shocked. So I don't know what that's about, but we are not planning on door knocking. But we love phone bankers, so if you don't want a phone bank, but you know people who would like to, please send them my way. Kate, thank you so much. All right, and Jubilee is on the phone. Thanks for coming back.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Is it breaking up? Not yet. Hopefully this will work. Awesome. Thank you for bearing with me. And I feel incredibly lucky because the Democratic Party assigns mentors, kind of from already elected House representatives to kind of mentor newbies, and Mari is my mentor. So that's been wonderful. So continuing on, RAD was really, they gave me a platform and really kind of helped me share my story. And in doing that, it really showed me what kind of shifts we can make as a society when we have a movement that centers marginalized voices. And so RAD's building this and building, there's groups across the country just like RAD who are all kind of building this movement together. So I've had a number of roles with RAD. We've mentioned some of them since 2016, but I think this one as a RAD endorsed candidate and hopefully soon to be legislative champion is probably my favorite. I made the final decision to run for office thanks to Pennsylvania Representative Summer Lee's speech at the Vermont Women's March this past January. She said, "One of our sisters said, the thing you could do, the action step is to vote. Stop. What came first, the chicken or the egg? That's the question I'm always asking. If you don't have anyone to vote for, then it is your responsibility, it is your duty, it is your obligation to run. Run first, then vote." In 2018, I was asked to run for state representative in my district. I thought about it, explored my options to try and make it feasible, but as a working mother with 3 young children, it was really hard to envision a way forward. So in the 2018 election, I did not have a candidate for state representative to vote for. I had to leave that spot on my ballot blank. So here we are in 2020, and with Representative Lee's words kind of echoing in my head, there were more requests for me to run. And I have always been moved and motivated by the injustice and inequities I see in my work. And now the cracks in our system have just become all too apparent in this pandemic. And there's no denying that the status quo is not working for the majority of the people. So this is our opportunity to rebuild and reshape and to create a Vermont that is equitable and just for everyone. And I know it is more important than ever that the residents in Addison 5 do not have to choose between voting for a party line Republican or leaving a blank spot on their ballot again this year. So I filed my paperwork to run for state representative. This is a critical moment for humanity. The climate crisis continues to be an imminent threat. Every day we have more and more of our citizens struggling to meet their basic needs like housing, healthcare, and food. And our systems of sin and racial injustice continue to destroy lives, even here in Vermont. It can feel so overwhelming, but I have hope. All of these issues are interconnected. Climate justice is economic justice. Economic justice is racial justice. It's gender justice. And to really work on one of these issues and make real change, we need to be working on all of them. And that is why I was happy to sign on to the Renew New England policy that Liz mentioned earlier, along with all the other RAD endorsed candidates. We can no longer just put Band-Aids on individual issues as they arise through narrowly focused bills. We need a multi-tactical plan like Renew New England that addresses the interconnectedness of all these issues with bills that complement each other to achieve this shared vision. It will not be easy, but I am prepared to do the work. I believe we need voices like mine in the State House to make it happen, ones with energy, the motivation from lived experience, as well as the political courage to see this kind of legislation through. So I hope you will support my campaign and consider a donation if you're able, as also as volunteering. Like it's been mentioned by both Kate and Dave and Liz, phone banking is so important this cycle. And I'm happy I've done a lot of phone banking in my work and for other campaigns. So I'm happy to meet with people one-on-one and just really reach out. I hope you'll consider volunteering for all of our campaigns. It takes a movement and people in multiple places of power if we want to see the kind of changes that RAD advocates for. So thank you. Oh, and JubileeMcGill.com is my website, or you can look for Jubilee for Vermont on Facebook.
Okay, I'm trying to put this in here and I'm missing letters. JubileeMcGill.com.
I can type it too. You got it.
Well, and I actually have your, so Jubilee for Vermont on Act Blue. So I have a tab on my phone open for Act Blue because I'm going to be contributing money for lawn signs.
Yeah, yeah. I just placed the order, and when I pay for it, it's going to make a very sad bank account. So I appreciate it.
And just so everybody knows, I'm sure lawn signs are popping up. Lawn signs do not move the needle. There is no evidence or data that suggests that lawn signs move the needle, but man, they're fun. They're fun. I like my lawn signs.
I have talked to more, like over 10 people in my phone banking who have been, well, I haven't seen any lawn signs. So a lot of, apparently that's what makes you a legitimate candidate. So I would add a little bit of weight to lawn signs.
Okay. I notice lawn signs. I do. Yes, and Front Porch Forum. So Front Porch Forum is this wonderful resource that we have in Vermont that is one of the things that I personally support because I use it a lot. Front Porch Forum, you know, putting endorsements out for the people we want to support in our Front Porch Forum is a really nice way to engage in civil dialogue and communicate with our neighbors. So does anybody have any questions? No? All right. All right. So we are, let's see, a little ahead, which is okay. Neil and Zoe, are you prepared to go a little early? Everybody's frozen. I'm gonna.
Of context about what's going on in Virgins around policing and the police budget. So in 2019, the city manager was working on the city budget, and in order to balance the budget, was thinking about cutting some money from the police budget. And there was a lot of public opinion about that. So there was a community-wide meeting about the police budget in Virgins. And for some context, let's see if I get this right. Neil was helping me earlier. Virgins spends more than any other city on its law enforcement budget as a percentage of the municipal budget. So it's in the mid-30s of how much of the municipal budget the percentage goes to policing in Virgins. So there were some concerns about it then. Ultimately, the budget got passed. Fast forward to May of 2020, and we're having a national conversation about police brutality, about police officers murdering Black men and women and people of color and Indigenous folks, and George Floyd's murder in Minneapolis. The city manager and the police chief called a policing forum in Virgins in early June to have this conversation, and it was a very highly attended meeting, and lots of community members voiced their discomfort, their concern, their challenges around policing in Virgins. And I think the other kind of caveat I'll add to this conversation, in addition to the pretty large slice of the municipal budget that the police occupies, part of a 2017 study called Driving While Black and Brown in Vermont found that Black drivers were 3 times more likely to be pulled over in Virgins. So while we are maybe not seeing what's happening on a national stage in Virgins, that doesn't mean that bias isn't happening here. So we had a policing forum, and I think really that was the moment. You know, I finished work at 5, Neil came into my office and he's like, there's a policing call at 6. Let's get on the phones, let's call our friends, let's call our neighbors and get them to show up to this meeting. Let's put together a Google document with questions to ask the police chief, with resources, with messaging. It's hard, complicated material, and I think Neil had the right instincts in terms of giving folks material to chew on and questions to look through, and bringing up their concerns to the meeting. So we had this policing forum meeting. It became very clear that it was not going to be the last conversation about policing in Vergennes. So the following week, the city council voted unanimously to have an exploratory committee about a potential civilian review board. And I want to emphasize that because it was not a unanimous vote to have a civilian review board. It was to have an exploratory committee to think about having a civilian review board. So just baby steps in this conversation. And Neal was nominated to be a part of that. So I'll let him speak a little bit about that work.
Yeah, so we as a group of 8 started meeting and doing sort of weekly meetings. And in all honesty, you know, I don't really find myself professionally or socially interacting with people who have pretty different political opinions from mine often. That's rare, and I think it's rare for me to be expected to collaborate on something and sort of come up with a sort of final product at the end of those conversations with someone who might disagree with me politically on a lot of things, including the topic of policing. But that is what this group is. It is 8 people who do come from very different places on this topic, who have a varied level of interest in the topic, as well as experiences with George Merkel, the police chief here, and policing in Vergennes in particular. So we, though, we're still committed to doing the work and sort of excited that we have this opportunity to come up with something together. But then what began after that was a series of events that were highly unfortunate and all fall on a scale of minor to serious intimidation of people who are serving in this group. And that has led to the resignation of a couple of people, including the chair of the exploratory committee. And remember, we don't even have a recommendation yet. And as well as another young member of the group. So the pressure was really put on us, and we have been victim to a tone in this community, not from everyone, but from many, that how dare you even talk about this community's policing. We have no problems here. We are above reproach. George Merkel is our neighbor and cares about this community a lot. And remember, none of us are saying that he doesn't. And so there was this attempt to sort of paint us as something that we weren't, and also to shut down the conversation. Procedurally and otherwise, it was a lot of efforts to do that, cut down on our time, etc. That really troubled me. And in all honesty, there was a moment where I stepped back and thought, okay, maybe this is not worth my stress involved in doing this work. But as I was seeing people resign from the group, just a volunteer organization, I recognized then that it was even more critical that I continue to voice my opinion in that group and elsewhere around policing in Vergennes. It got even worse. It blew up, and you might already have heard about the special city council meeting that was called on the 16th of July under false pretext, during which the former mayor, Jeff Fritz, was publicly ousted by the deputy mayor and the city manager in a pretty horrific, really embarrassing way for the city. I think the attempt was to not only take Jeff Fritz out, but also to shut down the conversation around policing by tying it to Jeff Fritz. Unfortunately, that second, for them, the second part of their attempt backfired, and there were 75 people on that call. And since the meeting, this is an hour-and-a-half long meeting, 2,000 people have watched the recording of that city meeting. our sense of the public opinion is that, yes, while what Jeff did, and I won't go into all the details, crossed a line, the response was worse. It really is dragging the city through the mud and creating a tone of divisiveness that was just simply unnecessary, all for the sake of putting up walls between citizens and responsible policing in Virgins.
Yeah, and I want to add to, in this meeting, Neal was speaking, and he's one of the few men of color in our community, and maybe one of the few people of color on the call. And he was talking about Philando Castile, who was killed by police in his car with his partner sitting next to him and his child in the back seat. And while Neal is telling this story, a voice from the patrol Zoom account said, "Why are they still letting him speak?"
From George Merkel's Zoom account.
And, I'm sure they thought they were muted, but it was just really clear that they were calling on the people in power to silence the man of color who was speaking about police brutality. And I just, it upsets me to watch the video of watching that happen in real time, and to think about that. And I think it brings to light, what are the conversations that are happening behind closed doors that we don't know about? And so I just think that's worth mentioning, that we need to acknowledge what happened and what that means for policing in Virgins.
And since that meeting, there have been 4 resignations from City Council, which meant that a body of 7 is now down to 3, which means that City Council can no longer function as the governing body in the city of Virgins. So we're still in a gray area. We're unsure who runs the city. And there is, at the same time, after the meeting, there was an explosion of support for and a recognition of the importance that this conversation, now more so than ever, must continue and must be given the room to unfold as it should. There are now 70 people who are actively coordinating and organizing on this effort to ensure that those in power who pulled this dog and pony show are held accountable, and that all mechanisms are used, whether that is connecting with media in the state of Vermont and elsewhere, whether that is writing formal complaints, whether that is FOIA, Freedom of Information Act requests, which have been filed on several accounts for several people, to really get down to exposing what, to any reasonable viewer, was an ugly act on behalf of a few to shut down civility in the city of Virgins.
And I think, going back to the organizing question, right, around what's happening in Virgins, for me, my guiding principles have been increased transparency and accountability for city leadership, amplifying community voices, and preparing the next slate of leaders. At some point there will be a special election for these 4 city council positions. So, Neal had mentioned there's a group of 70, and our hope is everybody has a valued voice in our Virgins community, and we want to provide as many opportunities for folks to take action. So, as Neal mentioned, if that's submitting letters to the editor or talking to media, if that's showing up to meetings, right? Like just simply showing up and being in the room. Maybe you are speaking up at meetings. There was a letter that circulated, a letter of concern, 230 people signed it. So we're thinking through, everybody has a role to play in this community, and how can we connect that excitement and interest and deep love of Virgins to action that feels right. for that community member. So that's what we're trying to do. And I think I am really leaning into this idea of messiness and not perfection. I think that's part of what inspired me was Niall literally an hour before the police forum being like, okay, Zoe, we're doing this. Get on the phone, call people, get people to show up. Let's work on this document. Like, just okay. And that I think sometimes pushes against what we're told to do. But I think this is the moment to show up and to engage and maybe be a little bit messy, but to be there for your neighbors. So that's what we've been up to in Virgins.
You two are such good speakers. Really.
Thank you.
And Neil, I didn't mean to cut you off, sorry.
No. I probably didn't have anything too substantial to add. It's still the start of this conversation. We are holding on as an exploratory committee by the tips of our fingers, in all honesty. We had planned to show up to the previous city council meeting. That couldn't happen because they couldn't meet quorum because the resignations happened hours before the meeting. With a request for an extension and a request for city council to appoint 2 more people to replace those that we lost. We want to be thorough, we want to be thoughtful. I still don't know whether we have the parameters to succeed in that charge. Whether that means that citizen accountability in Virgins is not in our future, I don't think so. If anything, I don't think this community will settle for less at this point. And whether that happens at the state level and is mandated in our community, whether that happens as with the formation of a body that is independent of city government here, that yet is able to hold the city's feet to the fire to ensure that information is shared with the public around the conduct issues within the police department. A lot has come to light since this conversation began that puts into question this rosy image that the police chief has cultivated for himself in the city of Virgins. And will continue to, because we are choosing actively to shine a light on an institution. And this is also, at the end of the day, not actually about Chief Merkel. It's not about the people. It's about setting up systems that are resilient and setting up systems for the future and not for the past. And that's something I've been trying to put forth as well, that it's, as many issues as we uncover here, George Merkel, it's not about you. It's about after you. And in perpetuity, how do we ensure that citizens not only have a voice in how we are policed as a community, but there are clear channels in place to ensure the right is done. And this idea that a citizen review is not novel, even to the city of Virgins. We have citizens actively volunteering their time and contributing conversations and decisions around a whole wealth of social services in our community. There's a development review board, there's even an advisory committee for our pool in town. But for the fact that the police budget is a third of every dollar that we spend as taxpayers on our municipality, the fact that there's absolutely no citizen insight into the management of our law enforcement is kind of absurd to me. And I'll keep going with that. With those arguments. It just seems awfully logical that we do this. And really, and honestly, it's insufficient. It'll be a first step towards shifting a culture where to a point where citizens are reminded of the incredible power that they hold to live in communities that they directly manage and are directly accountable to them and not the other way around.
Yeah, I might suggest that you think about getting in touch with Vermont Digger because this sounds like a really huge issue that the digger might be interested in investigating. I mean, Vergennes is the smallest city in the country, and there's a certain preciousness about it. And the New York Times might be interested in it too because of that preciousness. But I would start with Vermont Digger and try to get some PR happening around this issue, because it's outrageous as far as I'm concerned, the way you describe it. And people need to know about it beyond the borders of the city. So it's a caveat for the rest of us who live in small towns and small cities, or I guess every city in Vermont is pretty small, but it's something that more people need to know about.
I agree. And it's challenging because it's a fairly complex, nuanced story to tell.
Right.
And it is one that really, we're a square mile, but it really captures in so many ways how we are a microcosm of the national dialogue, as Zoe.
Exactly.
And there has been national interest. In the next couple of days, the Daily Beast is putting out a story that really goes into the weeds and really kind of captures, as you were saying, that this is a conversation that is happening elsewhere as well. I did an interview with VPR that they're putting out on the 7th, I believe, as part of the Brave Little State series that again talks about that. And the Addison Independent is covering it, as is 7 Days, but perhaps not Vermont Digger right now just yet. And and part of this is putting to question this image of Vergennes, and in some extent it is something that is mirrored at the state level, that yes, we are a distinctive community, both Vergennes as well as Vermont, for so many reasons, but we are by no means a community that is immune to the problems faced elsewhere. And to think that is a disservice to our marginalized communities, even if you do so from a totally innocent place, it is an exclusive narrative and a harmful narrative at the end of the day. While we are distinctive, and I absolutely agree that we are distinctive and should celebrate our distinctiveness, we are, as I said, we're not immune, and we're also not exceptional.
Yeah, and I think about it as, folks want to have this conversation about New York and Los Angeles and Minneapolis and Portland, Oregon. But this is the US on a cellular level. And we see that play out in the 2,500 person town of Vergennes. And so I think in some ways that allows us to decouple it from the personal and to say, this is just what it means to be a US community right now. So let's pause and take a step back and work to repair some of that harm that's happening everywhere in the country. I think that helps us situate ourselves both, in the context of in Vermont, but also across the country.
Yeah, that's why I think it's a bigger story than just Vergennes. So, but Digger does a really good job of investigative reporting, and so I would contact them. I can, I don't know if you know anybody on the staff there, but I do.
I put one name in the chat.
Oh, you did? Who did you?
I put Emma Cotton. So shout out to Emma. She does a beautiful job of covering Rutland. And Ellie, I'm so glad you mentioned Digger, because I actually made a note that this is a bigger story than the Addie Indy.
Yeah, I would contact Jim Welch, who's a projects manager there, and also my ex-husband. But
Who's that?
We're on friendly terms. So you could.
Can I put his name in the chat?
Yeah, you can mention my name. He's on the, he's listed.
Is he a Bryant?
No, Welch, W-E-L.
Oh, Jim Welch. Okay.
Oh,
W-E-L-S-C?
C-H. Just C-H.
Just, I did spell it right. Okay.
Like the grape.
Dropped it in the chat. Great.
Yeah.
I just want to add that. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was talking to Perry Freeman. She's a city councilor in Burlington a few days ago, and she was reaching out to me. I believe, I told her to call you, Liz. Okay. And she's hoping, I don't know if you know who she is, but she's a progressive city councilor and worked a lot with the Vermont Racial Justice Alliance in the whole, I don't know if you were paying attention to their whole thing with city council. And yeah, so she is hoping to get some kind of statewide thing going. There's going to be a short bit of time when the legislature goes back to the session. So if it's okay with you all, I am on your listserv for the new work because it's important to me. My husband is a Black man and I work in a shelter with a lot of marginalized folks and I'm in Virgins frequently. But she is interested in connecting with you all and possibly seeing how we might be able to support each other throughout the state.
I think that would be fantastic.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll do an email introducing you all.
I will say that we're barely keeping our heads in the water. And I think the fact that city council is not meeting is going to give us a little bit of respite, but it also means that we need to start being creative because our one avenue, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We can't be meeting in our backyards right now. And there is no, the one way in which we had a public forum, which was the city council, is not going to happen anymore. So this has to play out in other ways, and we need to keep our pressure on. I have put in a letter formally asking for the city manager's resignation, which I didn't take lightly. He's 30 something, he's about my age, and I don't want this to be a blemish on his record, but it got to a point where I recognize that is what is best for their city, that he stepped down. His responses to complaints, everything from—
To my complaint about Niall being interrupted and him saying, I don't have any control over the public, and it came from the patrol account.
Or to ask us to file complaints about the police chief to the police chief. There are systems here that are just absurd.
Ridiculous.
And we've been trying to point out the irony, but they don't see any humor in it, nor do they see any reason to question the legitimacy when at its core, these are flawed merry-go-rounds and by no means legitimate systems of accountability.
Can I ask how you folks in Virgins are organizing? Are you using email, social media? What's—
It's very ragtag. We have a 50-page long Google Doc right now. And yeah, from this perspective, we've really tried to lean into transparency. And, you know, if you're sending stuff to the city manager and city council, it's public record. And so we feel comfortable to ask folks as they feel comfortable to put it in the Google Doc. And we have an email. So it's really just like a BCC sending out emails. We're working on trying to formalize that a little bit more and make it feel a little bit easier and more accessible. You know, not everybody feels comfortable using Google Docs or being public in that way. So that is on. We have a meeting tomorrow about how to both formalize it, make it more accessible, and make it more sustainable, right? I think we've been chatting with city council not meeting. There's a vacuum, as Niall said, for space for public comment. So we're trying to think through how do we keep folks engaged in this conversation with tangible things that they can do to feel like they're a part of what's going on.
Yeah, but we're just kicking this off.
And it's evolving like literally all of the time. I feel like last time we talked to Liz, which was maybe 2 weeks ago, the landscape looked incredibly different than it does right now. So
right. We hadn't had these resignations.
No.
But it's also a story of how there can be a domino effect of a small action into something that really shakes up a community. I think the small action here was us kicking off the conversation of policing, and it's not a straight line to justice by any means. You know, it is sad that we have lost people who really have served Virgins well on city council, and would have otherwise, because they were disgusted with how the now mayor and city manager reacted. But the series of events itself, you know, these are people who've known each other often for decades. You know, the former mayor had George Merkel at his wedding. You know, it's those sorts of things are seem at this stage, as we are behind our computer screen so often, less tangible. But those it's taken a lot of bravery for a lot of people to stand up and say, hey, we have a long-standing relationship. We've worked together on a lot of things in the past, but I cannot support what you did. And that, you know, I don't have as many bridges to burn, because those bridges never existed to begin with. But the fact that people are ready to stand by what they believe and put their stake in the ground so strongly for what this community they are recognizing needs is an act of tremendous bravery that I really respect a lot of my neighbors for. And
I think that's part of what makes Vermont democracy so fantastic, right? It is the town meeting. It is us leaving at 9 o'clock and being like, I wish there was a bar open that we could all go have a drink after, you know, as you like walk out with your neighbors. And so I think part of the healing and repair that will happen hopefully in Virgins and also in the country is, how do we have these really difficult conversations with folks that we hold close in our lives, right? The people that were at our weddings or our aunts and uncles or our neighbors. I think we have to engage and not shy away from conflict, but view it as an opportunity to deepen and strengthen both the personal relationships and the community connection. So I think it is scary and uncomfortable and messy, but I've met so many people in Virgins in the last, 6 to 8 weeks that I hadn't met before. And I think there are so many opportunities for us to come out the other side of this more connected than we were before.
Can I just ask if you've contacted an attorney through the Vermont League of Cities and Towns? Have you done that?
I know there are folks in the community that have. That's the other thing that's been cool is like different pockets of people have the thing that they're really engaged on, and there's folks who are super engaged on the BTLC. I don't know if I got those letters right, but talking to folks there, folks who are doing the procedural questions around the Freedom of Information Act stuff, folks who want to join committees, folks who want to speak. So it's been really great to see different pockets of folks step up. So I don't know quite as much about what's happening with that, but I do know people are having that conversation.
And I actually...
The Secretary of State actually today, he commented on Matt Byrong's post about the meeting that ultimately got canceled. And according to what he wrote, he can't make a legal opinion kind of thing, but it sounds like there's going to have to be a special election. So I think a really important thing we like to focus on right now is recruiting people to run. And I know RAD is busy, but I'm wondering if we could even throw together like a Lead Vermont training or something, because I think it's important that we get the right kind of voices into City Council to make sure this continues,
Yeah, and I will say we've been working with Matt Byrong and Diane Lanfer to have those conversations. And I think, Jubilee, you had that lovely quote from the representative from Pennsylvania, which like so resonated with me. And I've started to think about it like very tentatively. But no one is going to save us. Like I have to save myself. We have to save ourselves. And I think it is, right? It's like feeling confident about who you're voting for. So I know there are lots of folks in the community having that conversation. And I think as much as people want to be engaged and recommend folks and get the word out, the better. Because I totally agree. We're going to need to have an organized slate of new leadership.
I made a note, and I'll put this out publicly because Ellie touched upon it. I'm going to be sending you the name of someone at the Secretary of State, the General Counsel, because, right, you know, when you asked Neil earlier, you know, who's in charge, you need to have a special election. So I'm going to send you the name of and the email of someone in Secretary of State Condos's office. And I just want to add that, you know, I applaud you too, really. These are our rights, and this is our democracy. And I'm going to make a shout out to my friends and comrades with the Indivisible movement, specifically Castleton Indivisible. Whose Vermont? Our Vermont. So these are our rights, and this is our democracy. And this movement is about harnessing our electoral power. And this is about moving from protest to power. So I will be delighted to support you. And I know RAD members, we will be delighted to support you in any and every way that we can. And this is happening in Bennington, and it looks differently. And as I said earlier, this is beginning to happen elsewhere as well. In fact, yeah,
I'm involved in the St. Albans work, and
St. Albans, right.
St. Albans has a lot of parallels. Well, in terms of the insider playing and families protecting families. And I think St. Albans is a good example of like the step after getting good people into city council, because we've had conversations in St. Albans. My mom lives in St. Albans. I don't claim every county. And there are folks on city council who are sort of coming from a more progressive mindset. Mike McCarthy is one, and they are moving the needle on the inside from city council. So I'd be interested to see if you guys could talk to some of those St. Albans folks. And the St. Albans neighbors group on Facebook is really, really active. And so did you say, Jubilee, that Perry Freeman's getting folks from all the different towns in Vermont working on this issue? So there's like a Vermont conversation, because feels like everybody's playing from the same playbook.
Kind of have like a unified message, and there is the possibility of getting some legislation to happen, whether it's giving towns the right to, you know, there's a lot of possibilities, and there are a few options in some of the bills that are going to be discussed when they come back in September. So it would be a quick turnaround, if not then, at the beginning of the legislative session, especially when they redo budgets and things like that. So she's, just wanting to get some kind of statewide thing. And there are some legislators I know she's talked to who are in. It's just going to take a lot of kind of coordinated and getting people across Vermont to show up, not literally necessarily, but calling and really pressing this. So that's what she's trying to coordinate. So I absolutely can connect her with you too. I'm sure you probably know her.
Yeah.
You're in Burton. Yeah. Like,
well,
you guys have it. Yeah.
I haven't connected her on this issue though. I just feel like all of these different town organizers, all these little neighbor groups need to compare notes, because all of the cops and city managers and city councilors are comparing notes. So we need to do that too.
Absolutely. And what Perry Freeman is specifically looking to do, she's looking to garner the energy of a people's movement, you know, as the legislature reconvenes in late August and early September to finish planning the fiscal year 21 budget, to say, stop investing in corrections and start investing in people, in housing, in healthcare, and education. So I'm so glad that this came up. And Kate, I have someone in St. Albans I'd like to connect with you and other people in St. Albans. I don't know if she's plugged in to the St. Albans dialogue she actually came to me in Rutland. Because again, these conversations, they are happening all over the state. And so together, you know, we really need to put our heads together and influence our future. So anything else? Any closing remarks? This is a great conversation.
No, it'd be great to have the contact that you were talking about in Burlington. And also it would be wonderful to get a sense of who our biggest allies that currently already serve in the State House are. Matt and Diane here are Virgin's reps, and Ruth and Chris, our senators, are aware and are engaged and have offered to speak, and I've spoken to a couple of them about what's going on in Virgin's. At the same time, we need champions who are on the right committees. I believe it's government operations, to keep pressuring them that it's not enough to put this burden on citizens to do in their own communities when it is truly the responsibility of our state government to lead all our municipalities towards strong citizen review.
And that's, so our work is twofold. We lobby our legislators, so that they will represent our values. And the fact is if and when they don't, we find those who will. And that's why, you know, we have people stepping up to lead, like Mari, like Jubilee. So, yeah, and Neil and Zoe, you know, you've been very courageous and really, you know, strong leaders in this movement. So I do want to applaud and recognize your courage, because it is scary to disagree publicly with people in power. And yet that is within our right as electoral members, as members of the community. So it doesn't mean it's easy, but.
Thank you so much.
And I have a lot to email you, so. Any closing remarks before we wrap this up a little early? Barbara, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you want to add anything?
No, I'm sorry I was late.
Oh, no worries. I'm sorry it took me a minute. There's a George Clock. Do we know who that is?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Another late person. Welcome, George. Sorry, I don't always, I have to pay better attention. I'm not used to admitting people, but George, I hope you weren't waiting too long. You're on mute. Were you waiting long?
3 or 4 minutes, I guess, but I'm really late getting to you, so.
Well, we're recording this meeting, and so something I do want to ask folks to do. So I started an Addison County Rights and Democracy page on Facebook. And so not everybody's on Facebook, but I will, I do ask that you join that, please. Share it with your friends. Let's have this centralized location where we can put stuff. You know, it's a good place from which we can ask people to join our work in Virgins and elsewhere in the county. And I will share the video, which will be uploaded to YouTube and then available on, Rights and Democracy has a YouTube channel. It's called, I think it's the RAD channel. So, right. So please, any closing remarks before I do my closing pitch? So George, you're gonna watch the recording. We're gonna send it to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And so I was just asking Barbara if she wanted to add anything.
No, I'm just, my heart goes out to you folks in Virgins, and I wish you the very best. I know it's got to be hard, so anything we could do to support you, please let us know. in living, having lived elsewhere and now living in Vermont for since 2008, you know, when you live in a community in Vermont that is so white, you know, they think they have no problems. But I grew up in a community like that, and it's just total, you know, denial, making themselves feel better that, you know, hey, we're okay. And I just applaud your, you know, being so courageous. So having been involved in some litigation, you know, with different things like whistle pig and stuff, it's hard. You know, it's really hard to put yourself out there. And so my heart goes out to you.
This is Barbara Wilson.
I'm sorry? George? Oh, he must have been talking. Yeah, and you know, I was going to be running too, and I actually am on the ballot, but because I have chronic Lyme, I was finally diagnosed and just started a treatment plan. I decided I just couldn't do it because it's very neurological, and so I have to focus on getting better, and hopefully am on the right path right now. It's going to be a while, I think, because I probably have had it for quite a while too. So it's kind of entrenched. So, you know, I feel bad. In fact, there will be a press release in the paper on tomorrow on Indy, you know, talking about me. I'm not. And I also just submitted it to the Rutland Herald too. So, but if I, you know, can help, you know, right now, phone banking is a little hard for me, but I will be, as we get into the, you know, closer to the election, I'll be happy to.
Barbara, thank you. I can't even imagine what a difficult decision it is to
I know.
run and then not run, but it is the right decision. So
Yeah.
your health is paramount.
Yeah, and I feel bad because, you know, I am on the primary ballot, and so, you know, people are probably wondering, where is she? What's she doing? You know, and all this kind of stuff. So that's why the press releases will be good. It's going to go out our town newsletter, and I'm trying to reach out to other towns as well. And hopefully I'll be firing on all 6 cylinders or whatever in 2 years. So I'll be better.
That's the end goal. So thank you all so much for coming this evening. This was an incredible conversation. We do have our next meeting scheduled is Wednesday, September 9th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. And then after that, if you want to save the date, September 9th and then October 14th. If you want to save those dates. So September 9th and October 14th, please save those dates. It looks like I also reserved November 11th, which I believe is Veterans Day. Anyway, so thank you all. Again, we have a Rights and Democracy, we have an Addison County Rights and Democracy Facebook group. If you would ask to join that and share it with your network. And if you would please follow the Rights and Democracy Facebook page. If you are interested in sustaining our work, we are grassroots funded, and I have put that in the chat that you can support us at radbt.org/support. Give what you can, $5 a month, $7 a month, $11 a month. I always throw out weird numbers, I don't know why. $16 a month, whatever works for you. And please volunteer for candidates in whatever way you can. But we will reconvene on September 9th, and I will be in touch with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. We wish you well, Barbara.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Night.